So I'm going to throw a cylinder with about 500 grams of stoneware clay. Make sure that your ball of clay is nice and round. You don't want a flat edge on it when you put it down on the wheel head, or you could get air trapped underneath and then it can pop off when you're beginning to throw. So round off the bottom of the ball of clay so you get a little point, and then bang that firmly down onto the wheel head, but make sure that the clay's really firmly attached. So give it a good bash onto the wheel head and make sure that it's firm, secure. Should look like a little kind of tortoise hump on the top of the wheel. To make sure that it's really firmly attached, with a sponge just drizzle a little bit of water on, and then holding your right hand, press your finger to the base of the clay, and you see that it's firmly attached all the way around. It means no air is going to get under there, no water is going to get under there. And also when you begin to cone up, you can actually get a bit of purchase under the piece of clay, so you can bring all the clay up. You want your wheel head to be spinning really, really fast when you go to cone up and centre down. So your foot flat down on the accelerator, and drizzle plenty of water on the top of it. Elbows tucked in, you don't want your arms moving around, and one hand in front of the other. Get directly above your clay. You want to be looking right down on it. You don't want to be sitting back, you'll never be able to do it. So right on top, hands either side, and push your hands into the centre whilst bringing them up, and your thumb over at the top. And you can do this again just to bring up a little bit more height. Make sure all the clay is coming up from the bottom. And you should end up with a little cone of clay, which is why it's called coning up. Then we're going to centre down. So again, add a little bit more water. Your right hand is going to be pressing down on the top, and that's going to control the horizontal. Your left hand is going to control the vertical. So as you press down, the clay is going to widen out, and your left hand is going to control how far it comes out, and you're going to be able to keep it nice and level. So again, directly on top of the clay, looking down, your hands are going to be attached at the thumbs and pressing down with your right hand and controlling with your left. If you feel that your clay is beginning to stick at all, gently take your hands away and add a little bit more water to the clay. Over here. And again, press all the way down, controlling the clay as it goes down. When you get near to the bottom, you want to get a drum, kind of shape, a little disc drum of clay. And you'll know when your clay is centred, when it's nice and flat on the top. And if you hold your finger to it, the clay shouldn't be moving. If you get your clay nice and centred, but you take your hands away too quickly, you'll see it begins to go off centre, and then it's moving away from your hand. You know, that's not on centre. So just a simpler thing as moving your hands away too quickly can put it off centre. To get it back on again, you just press in with your left hand and down again with your right, and it centres the clay nicely. And you should have your clay nicely centred, so a reasonably flat top and a reasonably straight wall. I can see that's nicely centred now. So what I want to do at this point, just clean up the wheel head so you can see what's going on as much as anything. And then we're going to open out. So again, a little bit of water on the top, my elbows tucked in, and my hands are going to be joined. You want to always join your hands somewhere if possible, so you get a loop going. So you've just got a lot more control over your arms and your hand movement, and they're working as one. So my hands are going to be joined at the wrist, and the fingers are going to be just cupping the piece of clay so it slides through nice and easily. Again, looking directly down, I'm going to press my thumb right into the centre of the clay. I'll be pressing it down until I get about 1 centimetre from the bottom. If you're not quite sure how far you've gone down, you can stop your wheel head and take a pin and put that right through the bottom, and I can see where it's wet that I have about that much clay. So it's quite a lot of clay at the bottom. It's a bit more than you actually need. That's because I do a deep foot ring on mine when I turn it afterwards. So that's going to be fine for let me draw out and pull up. So at this point I'm going to draw the clay out. That's going to set the inside of the cylinder. So if you think about looking on the inside of a cup, when you look down at the base of it, this is what you're going to set in. And it's when you've done this movement, you can't really change that again. So you want to get it right. So your left hand will be cupping the clay, hands joined at the thumb and the wrist. You put your fingers in and draw towards your body in a straight line. And then very gently take your hands away. Every movement's got to be quite slow and considered. I can see that the base isn't perfectly straight. There's a little bit of a hump in it, so you can use your sponge to go in and compress it down and flatten it. Always hold your right wrist when you're doing that, because you want to control your hand. It's quite easy to put your hand in and it gets dragged off. So hold your wrist and press in with your sponge and move it back and forward from the centre to the edge of your pot. Not only does this flatten out the base of your piece, it also consolidates and compresses all the particles of clay at the bottom. Because when you're throwing, you're putting water in and the bottom of your pot is going to get really soggy, and you want to counteract that. Because if you leave water in the bottom of your pot, then when it's drying out, you can put stress fractures in it and you end up with what's called an S-crack. It's a very common crack in the shape of an S, and it just means that your clay hasn't been compressed enough at the bottom. Also at this point, I'm going to drizzle a little bit of water on. I'm going to do what's called consolidating my rim, and that's again compressing all the particles on your rim. So putting finger either side of your piece very gently and sliding your right finger down in a kind of T-bar motion, and it just flattens off the rim of your piece but also compresses those particles. So it's nice and flat in the top, nice and flat in the base, and the walls are reasonably straight. I'm going to begin to draw up, but before I draw up I'm going to collar in the walls, because if you draw the walls straight up, because of the centrifugal forces, the clay wants to splay out the way. So if you have your walls pointing that way to begin with, when you draw up they go straight up, and that's what you're looking for. So to push my walls in, I'm going to put my right fingers on the inside and then just push over with the heel of my hand. Then push over right up to the top. And my clay now is pointing slightly in the way. So when I draw up, the walls are going to go straight up. But before I do that, I'm going to consolidate the rim again so it's nice and flat and the clay is all compressed. Add a little bit of water. Your left fingers are going to go in to the base of the pot, and this first knuckle is going to dig into the bottom. You're going to lock your fingers together in a position and draw up. So get right above your pot. This is when you want to slow your wheel right down. This knuckle is going to pinch into the bottom towards your finger, lock it, and then draw up towards your nose. That's the first pull. It's not bad, but you want to take away any excess water that's at the bottom of your pot, because if you leave it in there, it's just going to make the bottom of your pot really, really soggy, and you can end up with S-cracks, and it just compromises the integrity of your piece. Every time you've pulled up, you consolidate the walls again. That means that it's going to be nice and level, and you're going to be compressing the particles, and it makes them stronger, because the rim's the bit that's going to get chipped when you're taking it in and out of a cupboard or you're washing it. So this just makes the rim slightly stronger as well. It sounds slightly counterintuitive, but when you've taken the water away, you want to add just a little bit more to the walls. You just don't want to leave water sitting in the base of your pot. And collar in this time, I'm going to speed the wheel up, squeeze my hands together just to bring those walls back over so they're pointing slightly in the way again. Compress my rim. and then I'm going to do a second draw. So I'm going to put my fingers again on the inside, and it's this knuckle, the first knuckle. To make it sturdy, I'm going to put it around my thumb, and that's when I'm going to press together, pinch, lock my hands into that position and draw up towards my nose. Fingers in, lock at the base and begin to draw up directly towards my nose. Again, I'm going to do this and repeat it for a third time just to pull up a little bit of the weight at the bottom. So I'm going to take away the excess water that's sitting inside there, and I'm going to take away any of the excess clay. So I'm going to use a turning tool just to tidy it up and get rid of any excess that's there at the moment, just so I can get a good purchase for that last pull that I'm going to do. Again, collar in, squeezing, bringing the wools in slightly at the top, level it off. I'm going to do one last pull. Pinch, then begin to draw up slowly towards your nose. Oops. If it begins to stick or dry out, add a little bit more water, go back to where you were, draw up again. So at this point, you want to take away any of the water in the bottom of your pot. And if you're going for a perfect cylinder, it's at this point you can use collaring to bring the walls back in, draw it up so you get perfectly level, straight walls. So from the base of your pot, squeezing with and constricting with your fingers, pulling those walls reasonably straight up and down. You can use a metal kidney to do this as well, but if you're going to be pressing on the outside of it, you want to be compressing on the inside so you've got something to press against. So my fingers are going right at the bottom, slow my wheel down, and I'm pressing in with my kidney just to bring those walls up, make them nicely straight. So if you can get to this point, and that's great, and you can leave your pot at this point and you can make it just into a mug or something, but you could also start to begin to belly out. So if you're confident with your control over the clay, you can then begin to use your hands to belly and change the shape of the piece. So I'm going to be pressing from the inside and belly out the way, so it literally gives it a belly on the pot, but I'm going to compress on the outside with my hands, so I'm giving it support. So pressing from the inside, pressing out, and beginning to put a little belly on that pot. That's how you can begin to draw your pot out slightly. Then you would level off on the top. Make sure you're taking away any of the excess water that's inside there. Because if you leave it sitting in there, it'll make your pot collapse eventually. Tidy up by taking away a little bit of the excess clay right from the very bottom. And on your top, it's quite a sharp angle on there, and if you're going to be using that as a drinking vessel, it's not going to be very nice against your lip. Also, if it's a sharp angle on the top, then it's not going to take on glaze very well. So if you take a piece of chamois, get a piece of chamois and make it nice and wet, make it into a little loop, gently put it over the top of your rim and slightly compress down, moving it backwards and forwards slightly, and you get a really nice soft rim on your piece. That means that if you're using it as a drinking vessel, it'll feel really nice to the touch, and also you'll get a really good uptake of glaze on the rim of your piece. So I'm just going to fix the shape slightly because it's a little bit odd, the proportions aren't great. So you can sit back and just have a look at the sides and see where you might want to change it. I'm going to draw it out, belly it out just a little on the sides here. Slightly better. And again, soften off the rim. And then you want to take it off the wheel head. This can be the tricky bit because this is when you've made a really beautiful pot and it just collapses because you can't get it to your tile. So I'm going to put it on a tile, but I'm going to use the unglazed side of the tile, not the shiny side. If you put it on the shiny side and you forget to put paper down, it can stick. So you should ideally put paper down, but if you forget, it still won't stick on that side, it'll dry off. But put your paper down, put your tile somewhere safe. Drizzle a little bit of water on your wheel head. So what you're going to do is drag that water underneath the pot and it'll cause an aquaplane and you can slide it straight off. So get your wire, put it really taut on the wheel head, get some of that water and just drag it straight underneath towards yourself. And you should see the pot begin to move slightly. Then just using your fingers right at the very base, you can slide that pot off. Take it off of the wheel head. You want to put it really gently down onto your tile. What you don't want to do is flop it down onto your tile because at that point this is really delicate and it could just slump forward and you lose your pot. So that's your pot.